And why do you think that's been said? Because you put, leadership is usually put in a vulnerable position. Moses is in a vulnerable position in that he cannot express or explain his feelings to people who are not listening to him. For one, come on over. We will not come. What's the mindset? We're not coming back there. Man, please, don't even call me. You know, and most people like to say, well, the telephone works two ways. I can dial out and you can dial out just like I can. Well, yeah, that may be true. But if I'm the one doing all the calling, I'm doing all the checking, after a period of time I shut it down. But what's wrong with you? Well, what's wrong with me? You stop responding. I call, your phone ring, you don't pick up. You act like you don't want to talk to me. Then when I do talk to you, you got an attitude like you're always in a hurry, you tired, you already got yourself set up for your little game boys. Oh, I was just about to go to bed, I'm so tired. Okay, well bless your heart. There will be no more of those calls. I don't run behind people. That's the mindset of Moses here. I called y'all, and y'all got this mindset that no, we're not going to be bothered. Now that's when his insides start stirring. He starts saying, you go get it. Now I've done what I was supposed to do. He took all the proper steps, and when those steps had been taken, he had come to the end of his journey with patience with these people. And that was what you saw. I mean, it was just, ta-da, I'm done. And you can see it. True? And it's understandable, in a sense. It's understandable. The golden text says, from Psalm 16:1, preserve me, O God, for in thee do I put my trust, which is a major emphasis in our conversations in the next few years. We'll be talking about God and through Jesus Christ, how we put our confidence in him. But I was looking at this text and I thought, wow, after the blatantly rebellious accusations, and people will do that. Sometimes they do it to stir your emotions. Sometimes they do that to stir the emotions of those who are around them. Because they got to create their base. And they got to feed them the meat that they need, that red meat that gets them all going. Tell them off. Tell them like you know how to tell them. Say it for me too. That's the attitude. And you got to go back in there. These are famous people. These are people of great renown. These are folks who are known by their colleagues and comrades. They are individuals who have been somehow elevated in the eyes and the sight of those persons. So when you get elevated to a place, sometimes false elevations can get you into a real problem. False elevations can get you into true degradation and degradation. And what's happening is you're going to be degraded by God. God's going to show you that you don't have the platform that you think you have. And the person, just because he does not rattle off and he's not, rattling sabers now, he's not using his sword to cut your head off, doesn't mean he can't. You know what I'm saying? And I understand as a leader, in all these multiple years of having to lead people, you have individuals that like to challenge authority all the time. You don't find one. And some do that calm, nice, nasty kind of thing. They're smiling and talking to you the whole time they're setting you up. And they've already told their friends and their colleagues how they're going to do you. And they're doing all of that, and they're smiling and talking the whole time and wearing you out. And you know what they're doing. It's not like you miss it. If you're anything like I am, you got a gift beyond the gift. There's a gift in there. There's a natural, normal observation, but then there's that gift on the inside that says, be careful with that. Yeah. That right there, if you can respond to that statement, it just means it's loaded. Yeah. Your response to that is going to take you in a whole new space. Yeah. Keep it within the confines of the protocols and the standards that are before you. Do not allow personality or person to get involved. If you let your emotions get in it, matter of fact, take yourself out of the room. And you have to do it. You have to learn how to do that. You have to be calm when you want to be erratic. You want to snap. Oh my goodness, and you feel like you got the right to. Oh, did they not say that to me? Huh? One man said, the Bible said, when they hit you on one cheek, offer them the other. Then they come back and say, but I'm not in the Bible. You hit me, I'm going to jump you. In my mind, I can't say that because I am in another space altogether. I represent multiple realities. My responsibility hits more than one place. So every decision I make affects every person I'm in connection with. Whether it be a church member, in Waycross, Claxton, Int'l, wherever I'm located, whatever I do is going to be affecting more than me. So my activities and actions toward individuals are going to be totally different. Yes, ma'am.
I just said that whether it's this local church or Claxton, Int'l, I thought you were going to whatever you do, your decisions based on the industry. When it comes to made your decisions, okay, and then the different places that you are, for instance, the college, and then the group that you are on board, it just goes from here to here, and it goes like
It's like a river. And I be careful how I respond to things, even if I am tired. Even when I've got to that place where I've run all day from this meeting to that meeting, and someone will come with another something. And say, I need you over here. Whether it be a family member or anyone. I may be on the road going in one direction and end up having to come off that road to another road in this spot. So the struggle that I have oftentimes comes as a result of how people don't understand. I really don't understand the amount of things that you carry with you. You carry people in your heart. Not just carry them just because you go to a meeting. But once you connect to a person, you carry them in your heart. And Moses carried these people in his heart. You can imagine the multiple people that he was in contact with on a daily basis, having at one time sat before the people consistently, talking to them until his father-in-law at some point had to come to him and tell him, boy, you're doing too much. You got too much on you. We need to delegate some of this authority. I had a contest and all these other things coming back to back. I'm asking people to respond. Nobody's responding. I'm asking my own people. I call them. I can't get them responding. I'm thinking, Lord, what in the world's going on? Why are these people not responding to me? And I'm doing all I know to do. So I'm stuck with like this, just waiting. I'm always in the waiting pattern. And then all of a sudden, God will send a Savior. He'll send someone to help me. Because all the rest of the people that are around me seem to be worn and forlorn, and tired, and just frustrated, and as a result of it, they give me their feelings. And I feel all of that. I feel that, and then I already feel what I'm feeling, so that couples it. And I can only say to you, when you are walking in God, and I see where Moses is going, you feel the feelings of the people, but you also feel the God you're serving. So you've got two feelings. So there's ambiguous ambivalence. It's a large, broad, not knowing how to respond right now, except I'm just giving my Father in heaven judgment. Whatever the results might be, so be it. Right now, our hand is in the air. So we see this. This is wonderful, isn't it? What a powerful lesson. I look at this sometimes in judgment. I think about there's a judgment coming on people. They don't understand that although they are saying what they want to say and feeling what they want to feel and expressing what they want to express and allowing the malignancy and the blatant rebellion to be articulated from their mouths and expressed through their activities and their emotions, and you just have to wait. I'm not doing anything. And you can see it. And the poor man, and I say poor man, because they're murmuring against him. Matter of fact, if you go back to chapter 16, verse 12, And I know we're in 23 through 35, but verse 12 says that Moses sent to call. Do you see that? What did he say? Read that verse.
And Moses said to call Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, which said, we will not come up.
No, I'm not doing it. The leader calls for you and you don't show up. Matter of fact, you put him on your schedule. But I won't be able to do it at that time. Matter of fact, I won't be coming at all. In my head, I think, wait a minute, hold on. Did I just hear what I thought I heard? Did this person tell me? They did. Okay, just cool down. Get in your head that you don't have to respond to that. Because they're not responding to you. Move to something else, to someone else. Leave them alone. Let them fry in their own grease. Just turn them over to themselves. Because once you do that, and you ignore them from that point on, then they'll start saying, well, he just disrespecting me. He just not even speaking to me at all. Passed right by me. Good morning. That's all he said. Then the engagement and conversation. Well, when he was trying to talk to you, what were you doing? And I tell people oftentimes when I look at them, I say, now, have you ever noticed a change between us? When you ever notice a change between us, it's something you've done. Check it. Check what you've done. Go back. If you need to rehearse those conversations we've had, and even rehearse some of the thoughts that I've shared with you, and if you notice how many of the things on the peck list, on the bullet points that you did not do, that I've requested of you, check it now. I'm not going to keep repeating the same thing and thinking you're going to do it if you've already proven to me you're not doing it. I'm not going to engage in that kind of conversation with you anymore. Matter of fact, I get someone else to do it. You want me down because you feel like I depend upon you? Well, blessed Savior still out there. I depend on him. And if he don't put another person in the spot you're in, then there won't be another person in that spot. Obviously, that spot is not necessary. Because God allows these things to be. Oh, God knows he does. I didn't say he started it. I didn't say he initiated it. I said he allows it. He allowed them to talk foolishness. He allowed them to do, but he didn't start it. Past scripture popped up in my head while I was talking. And I know in this lesson, I'll keep going back to this passage. This is Isaiah 54:14 through 16. And I want you to kind of, while you're journeying over to that passage of scripture, I want you to get in your head. Now, there's going to be some people doing things, but God is not the initiator. They will do it, but he didn't start it. What does verse 14 say?
In righteousness shall I be established, that I shall be far from oppression, but I shall not fear, and from terror, for it shall not come near me.
Righteousness establishes you. What God is saying is when I call you into my way of doing, which is this all this is, God's way of doing. His standard. God's way of doing is different from our way of doing it. So when God calls us into doing something, we do it like he says. So righteousness establishes you. In short, it lays foundation for your stance. So why am I standing here? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing Sunday school? Why am I in this building? Why am I on this other side of the railroad track? Why am I here as long as I am here? Really, what it is, God's way of doing it. It's his standard. Yeah, I can hear people all the time saying, oh, you need to leave. You know, I get that. But reality is, I can't do any movement when God does not move. I don't care how much we see. I see you over there and I see you here. I see me a lot of places too. But you know what? I see me in Cancun. I see me up on the riverfront. I see me in Bahamas. But I mean, now the reason why I see all of that is because people give me those ideas. We gotta send your way, send me. Send me, I'll go. You know, if you send me, I'll go. But you gotta send me, you gotta give me some funds and all of that other stuff. So what I'm saying in general is I don't make decisions like that. Sometimes it's easier said than done. You need a so-and-so and so-and-so. You need a vacation. You need a vehicle. You need a this. And I say, all that sounds good, but y'all have to take care of that. That's not my responsibility. My responsibility is you. I am your responsibility.
Thank you, Lord.
That's the way it works.
Thank you, Father.
This is like a marriage.
Thank you, Lord.
I'm only providing these things because that's what the Bible tells me to provide. And then there will be people who will give me other assignments along the way that they think belong to me to do. And it's not mine. It's not biblical. So when I said that, go to 15.
Behold, they shall surely gather together.
but not by me. Whosoever shall gather together against thee shall fall for thy sake.
Let them do it. They're going to do it. They will gather together, but I did not do that. And so when they get together, and I don't care how many of them it is. I don't care if it's 250 renowned. I don't care if it's 5 million renowned. When I am standing with you, and I've established you in righteousness, and in my standard, I don't care what anybody else says or does, far or near, close, up, or far off.
Yes, Lord. Thank you,
I
God.
got you. Because I established you. I planted you. I placed you. And I promoted you.
Yes.
So if God placed, planted, and promoted you, then it's your job to stay right where He tells you and stay in that spot. And He will honor you right there. You don't have to be all over the place in order to get things done. Matter of fact, you can be in one spot nowadays. Because folks make up a video in their bedroom. Where it used to be, folk had to be accepted and acknowledged by certain people in the world. Now all it takes is one TikTok or some kind of YouTube video and get enough optimization and folks start following you and you get enough likes and subscriptions, you can end up having your own platform without anyone else and create your own followership. So when people are walking out, oh, look at this person, so you can create that same thing for yourself, if that's what you like. And we can do that for ourselves. But our problem oftentimes is instead of us pushing the agenda of Jesus, we got our own agenda. I'm done with that. So the Lord warns Moses. The Lord warns Moses. Let's look at that. There's a good bit of information there. And it starts under that head. Can I get a reader there?
Numbers 16:23 says that the Lord
Would you go back to the, just right on page 159,
God was clearly angry with Korah, Dathan, Abiram, and the other rebels for rising up not only against Moses and Aaron, but against the Lord Himself. God had repeatedly shown the people that Moses was His chosen representative and that he had a unique relationship with Moses. Numbers 16:23 states that the Lord spoke to Moses. God did not speak to Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. He did not speak to the other 250 men. He did not speak to the elders of Israel or to anyone else in the camp. He spoke to Moses. When it was time for God to speak a message to the people, He did so through Moses. This was no exception, and it further solidified the fact that God was with Moses and had blessed his leadership. Korah, a Levite of the family of Kohath, and David and Abiram, who were Reubenites, lived in close proximity to each other near the tabernacle on the south side. Numbers 2:10, 3:29. David and Abiram had refused to appear before the Lord at the tabernacle with the other 250 men, as Moses had instructed. The Lord knew where they were, however, and would have hold them accountable. For the rebellion was not merely against Moses, but ultimately against God Himself. We cannot think that we can hide from the Lord when we sin. It is foolish to assume that if we stay out of church or away from God's people, that what we do does not matter.
See that hook.
We may not like what our church leaders say, but it is important to understand that they are serving under the authority of God and that we are accountable to the Lord who called them into leadership over us. It is not wise to rebel against them or try to wrestle authority from them. It is especially foolish to think that we are an authority unto ourselves. Since the rebel leaders would not go to Moses, Moses would go to them. Answering Moses' request not to kill all the people, God instructed him to tell the people to get away from the places where Korah, Dathan, and Abiram lived. This gave the people ample warning to remove themselves from the judgment of God. Anyone who refused to get away from these three men and their tents would undoubtedly suffer the same divine punishment.
Well, sounds very interesting that we have this introduction. What are we extracting from this? What are we pulling out of this? What are some high points that you hear?
Since God had chosen and selected and placed Moses as leader, when he wanted to talk, even if it was about some of them, he did not call those other subordinates. He called and talked with his person that he could leadership, since he was the called one.
So, in this judgment on rebellion, one of the first things we're noticing, God only speaks to his authority. And I'm going to put this word delegated. Delegated authority. You see, he put certain people in position. And I pulled it out and put it down here because I want to discuss it a bit. What does this delegated actually mean? When you're delegated, what does that actually mean? I didn't say dedicated. I said delegated. What does that mean?
Yeah, I was asking.
Chosen, selected, assigned. You have a particular job. Anybody got one? Some jobs we join. Like being a wife or a husband, that's a job you ask for. That's a work. Isn't it a work? Come on, ladies, y'all married. Y'all know all y'all in here married with Dr. C. Dr. C married her ministry. But what I'm saying now, what you saying? What you say? It's a work. It's an unpaid ministry. Because you might get money and all that while you're in it. But you got to use that for the stuff that's in the house. You might get a just because gift periodically, but that's not telling you how you feel every day of the week, 365 days a year, and 366 in a week. Sometimes you want to leave on the leap day. I mean, all I can take it is. Yeah. Yeah, you can go through it. And here it is. That's a particular job. You're given a particular job. You've been assigned, selected, and chosen. But it doesn't make it good. It doesn't make it feel good. You know, the event called marriage, the wedding. The wedding itself is one thing. The marriage is a whole other space. Anybody gonna tell nobody that? So that's why folk get in one, because they enjoy marriages. They enjoy how it looks going down the aisle, but they're living after that. And that ought to be a book title, Living After Marriage. No, Living After the Wedding. Just after the wedding, what do you have to deal with? You got signs, you got smells, you got activities, you got all kinds of stuff. that you got to deal with that you wouldn't have never dealt with. When you're by yourself, you don't deal with these things.
You speaking good? You speaking good, Bishop.
But what I'm saying is, I mean, you working to a point. I mean, 1 year next month.
I know.
So you know that in the first year is always kind of a real test. Because now you got to try to bring two ideas together. I'm talking about the marriage of extremes. You know, I didn't hear that today. So now you're learning to trust one another. That's a hard task. Because sometimes you don't know who's that on the phone. But you want to know, you want to ask the question. You're talking really long to that person, and you sound like you're happy about it. And when you just a few months ago, you talking to me, you didn't sound so, you know, you had that stage sound. Oh, I'm so tired. Then somebody else called you, light up like a light bulb. And then I'm like, wait a minute, hold on, minute, what's that about? Okay. Anyway, off of that matching point. I'm putting that out there because that's how a pastor can feel sometimes with the congregants. When people say, how do you know? I know because I've been here. Yeah. I remember the first year. I remember that day. I said so many times to myself, God, are you real? Is this happening for real? Gosh. I went to school for this, right? Okay. All right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes. But, I mean, those are times when you have that in you, and I know when I see these newborn pastors, and everybody's giving them accolades, and might need to give them some Kool-Aid. I'm telling you, after the fact, let me get 6 months in. The first 6 months, with all the bills coming in, is in your, listen here, in your name. Even if it's not yours, it's in your name. It goes to that church. Every fault, flaw, character thing that goes on, everything that's wrong is your fault. Everything. And when you do the best you can, and some stuff has been hidden from you. You don't even know what's going on. Wife might hide something from husband, husband might hide something from wife. Well, I thought you saw it. I put it on the cabinet, thought you read it. You didn't see it. Well, you didn't highlight it. You didn't tell me I was supposed to be looking at it, and I didn't know what I was looking at when I was looking at it. So why didn't you explain to me what this is? Because I don't know what it is. But I wanted you to kind of look at it so you go pay him. So you gave me, the money was in there too? So in my mind, there's a lot going on with a lot of this. And in your head, you're not saying it, but you know how you're feeling about the whole matter, so you just don't say it. Sometimes you hold your mouth closed. Just to keep peace in the valley. You know, then after a while, when you feel like, blow it up! I've had enough. And then you're going to talk and I hit it. So who did it? Who did it? You did it. It's been going on a long time. The tea kettle been on the stove. And the heat has been turned up a little bit higher. And now the sound is going off. And you can't get frustrated. Or you can, but you shouldn't get frustrated. Because oftentimes the assignment comes with these things. It comes with your territory. I knew when I stepped into the office, both as pastor, mayor, and teacher. I guess that's more than both. That's 3 things. I was ready for all of the stuff that was going to come with it. I said, I don't have any hair to pull out, so I don't know what I'm going to do. I guess I'm just going to scratch my head. But I would dare not do that and make my bald head up. But I thought to myself, you know, you can't get a new set of head, you know. Thank God for it. So my thought is, maybe I'm not sure he's like pull the hair out, but anyway, but my thought, you know, wouldn't work. If y'all saw it, you wouldn't be here long that point. Not like you are now. You probably on the floor or under the pew or in your car. No. So that is what I heard about. I tried to encourage you to do that, but that won't be happening. Moses warns the people. What is he saying here? Let's hear that. Moses goes to court.
Moses goes to court and with the elders of Israel and Int'l, Moses went directly to Dathan and Abiram. Their stubborn refusal to go to him as he had instructed Moses to go to them. They would not in any way escape the punishment that was going to come upon them. It appears that at some point Korah left the 250 men at the tabernacle to stand alongside Dathan and Abiram in their defense. Perhaps one reason for commanding the rebels to meet with God at the entrance of the tabernacle was to offer them one final chance to repent. As we have already learned, God is slow to anger and abundant in mercy, meaning that he does not take pleasure in executing judgment upon anyone. Even if a retreat was being offered prior when Nathan and Abiram refused to report indicated their refusal to repent. When Moses had to go to them because of their continued rejection of God's word, it sealed their fate. They would not escape the judgment of God and would suffer the dire consequences of rebellion against the Lord. In that rebellion, they had led others to rebel as well. They tried to circumvent God's entire plan for leading the Israelites into the promised land. When Moses and the elders reached Dathan and Abiram, he immediately told all the people to get away from the tent and get of these men and not touch any of their belongings. These men were under God's wrath, and any contact with them or their possessions put a person at great risk of God's judgment. Since these two men, as well as Korah, were well-known, influential leaders among the Israelites, it is not unreasonable to think that their possessions were substantial. It may have been tempting for the people around them to want to take what they owned and gain personally from the situation. God prevented this by forbidding anyone from even touching what they own.
Now here's an interesting thing. Most people don't realize there is, that's why I don't do too much what they call thrift shopping, but back to this point. Much of the clothing that a person wears has their anointing on it. And their spirit is in their clothing. So what's on them gets on you. You may not have been sick, but you purchased some items that a sick person had. And all of a sudden you have a situation that has arisen, and you don't know where does this come from? And it's almost like a shocker to you, because you go to the doctor's office and you've not had this problem before, and then how it has developed and has come to pass because of the events that's going on inside of the clothing. Most people don't understand that. I used to tell people to be very mindful. You go back and study the Bible, throughout the Bible, it talks about clothing and how it affected the people who wore them. If you remember Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, what he did was went and took those garments from Naaman, who was a leper. And the man had, obviously these were brand new clothes, because the reason why he was doing a lot of changing clothes is because his skin was good. So the disease was causing him to lose his skin. And inside of his clothing, he would leave layers of his skin in his clothing. So when you would purchase something or take something from him, you also probably got a little bit of him with it. Now, I would say that the garments he may have given away may not have had any. No one may have ever worn it at all. But the idea that the individual who went to get those things did it under deceptive ways. Things started happening. You know, I noticed that even with my items, people ask, well, who are you going to get this to when you, notice mantles go to people who are, I would say, focused. So when you're focused on the leadership and you're following that leader strongly, then there's a possibility those things can come to you if they can assign them to you. But I wouldn't suggest that you just go and take something. I've seen people give away items of dead people. Just give them away. There are people who's going carousing them. Well, they don't understand why some of the problems they may be encountering because they don't know what the other person is doing. And some of the same spirits that were coming after them were coming after that mantle or that clothing that person is wearing. Can you see this being a situation? This is the same thing in the Bible when it comes down to this. He says, I don't want y'all wearing those clothing, those items. Matter of fact, don't even get near those possessions. And if we go back to the Ai story with Joshua, you remember one of the major reasons why God allowed those people to be, similarly to this group, he had them stoned, and not only were they stoned, they were burned, and all their possessions. Because they took the accursed things from the tents and from the cities walls out of Jericho and put them in their tent. Now he said, if you touch these things, you will become a curse. Items of cursed people become cursings on your family and you when you grab hold of them. So if you're wondering why your body's reacting to certain things that it did not beforehand, or you're going through dementia, all kinds of things that you had not gone through before, I tell you, much of that comes from some things we acquired from people who were going through similar things. You know, because nice kind of people say, listen, I got 5 or 6 suits in there, I'm not wearing those things. You go in there and get them out there. Take them with you. You don't know what's in there. And you go, oh Lord, the Lord bless his soul. Okay. I'm going to let you have that. But I want you to pray. You basically need to go through a service of consecration. That's what we usually do when we get ready to bring items into the church. You don't just bring something in the building, you pray over it. People have been gone for a minute, you pray over them too. Because spirits come with people. What you connect to, it connect to you. You can start hating what you love based on what you connected to. Maybe nobody heard that. You get in a group of people who are railing on a person and you have never disliked that person, but because you're now amongst that crew and you stay with them a good bit, eventually the spirit of that group get on you. Well, you won't believe it. When we went back and read that passage, one man left his whole group. Korah left the 250. Somehow, he was amongst another group of people who weren't going to get charged with the problem at first, but because he was going to be in defiance with the other two, Dathan and Abiram, now it's going to malignantly spread into all of those people's houses. Not only will those 3 go down, but everything connected to them, their houses, their families, all of that. Everything that pertained to them, the book said appertained. All of their possessions, everything gonna go down. I suggest that we consider and reconsider who we connect with. I really do. That's on every platform. Sometimes you have to go back and check, look at all the people that's on your group and watch what they're doing and say, oh, we can't. Because do you know, oftentimes you are attributed with and or given the characteristic of another person because you hang out with them. Even if it's a Facebook friend, I don't know, you have to be careful with those two. But all kinds of people that are connected to you can sometimes be, can I tell you, even the little groups, that's the little private groups they have, talking about everybody and everything, you may not want to be in that group. Well, I just need to know the information, that's all I went there for. Okay, one day you'll get the information. And that'll be all you'll be in there for. You'll get the information. So I suggest to people sometimes, be careful. Watch the company you keep. Be careful with those people. Because not only were the people pulling on each other, they were putting on people that each other were connected to. So other people getting thrown into the whole spin, not knowing what was going on. Listen, the book says these men were under God's wrath, and any contact with them or their possessions put a person at great risk. Did you see that? Okay, let's go back in. I want to look at three questions. First one, who went with Moses to approach Dathan and Abiram? The elders. So it's not just one person who went over. Moses didn't go by himself. So it's like I said, okay, I need to see all the elders, all the directors of departments. I have a situation where we need to go and talk to an individual. We've done this before. We sound very familiar. Came out of the Bible. So we had to go to someone's home. We all loaded up in my car. In several cars, actually. My car and a few other cars. And we did like a caravan from here to the person's home. I also told him to call the police to meet me there. made sure I kept my composure, but I also didn't want to get a sign problem, because sometimes people say you're doing something you haven't done. You understand what I mean? And when you come in cars or people and you're out, you come out on somebody's lawn, immediately they think, again, it's like some retaliation gonna come. So you might have somebody open a window and here comes a barrel of a shotgun, and folks will be killed. And in this season we in, while we might be thinking that's kind of laughable, it is very plausible. And after seeing some of the things that I saw last week, newsworthy news. I am just, I'm non-committed to a little bit of things that I would have been committed to days and months before. I find that we are slowly but surely, and maybe not slowly, we're going downhill. And we're running into some things we have not seen the likes of in a long time. And now it's resurfaced. And history is nothing but a cycle. The rise and the fall. The rise and the fall. You study any culture or civilization, it's the rise and fall of Rome, the rise and fall of Greece. These are places that were the major incidents. Rise and fall, and I won't say the UK, but in Europe, they used to own everything. It was colonizing everything. They were the major thing. They owned probably a fourth of the world. Alexander the Great, same kind of thing. But you see what happens to people when they leave. And they become civilly aggravated. When we start having problems amongst ourselves, and we have things going on in our own house, and we got civil war going on in our own place, then somebody else sees your weakness and they come in and take advantage of that. And while they're preparing their arms and their ammunition, and you're over here killing each other, well, they don't really have, they just gotta watch you eat each other up while they set up their little bands of to come right on in and take what they want. You're so busy fighting, they just walk in and pick it up. They don't even have to fight for it. Instead of using our resources, don't just go out there. Number two, what did Moses tell the people to do in regard to these two men? What did he tell them?
Not touch anything.
Get yourself away from this. It's getting to happen. Now, what you're going to get now, this is the other side of a coin that I don't like that happens. When God does something to people, people blame people for what God did. Did you hear me? God may open the earth up, but then Moses and everyone will get credit for it. You can do the right thing and follow God, and God do all the judging, but at the end of the day, you still gonna get judged for judging.
Yeah.
For the judgment that you didn't give, God meant it out, He needed it out, but you still gonna get it from getting it, for them getting it. So if I correct the person in the building, I've done that. You correct someone because God says, okay, if you don't get it, I mean, if you go to just because God said it, tell you over and over, He said, you couldn't do it over, you correct them, do it in the front, and you do it, and then guess what you get? You're gonna beat down. Or what you will. Now you can call them all the time and talk to them. And someone will come to you and say, well, what did He want you for? What was He calling you for? Oh, nothing. Oh, no, don't pay them for nothing. So I bet you don't just call people and talk. That's a lie you done told. Now, what is it? I mean, I watch people do all kinds of stuff. So when you do say things, and that's why I can't even ask for people, I can't send anybody to go get someone now. I learned that years back. You send people in to go get them, and they say it in such a way that it draws attention to what you're trying to do in secret. And then yet there's another struggle that comes with that. So what would have been something probably more smoothly done, now it becomes something that's difficult to do because you made a big to-do out of it. This may not sound like anything to you, but it's a whole lot of me. This whole lesson is my life. When I come back into this, I look at this from number 3. It says, what did Moses warn concerning anyone who stood with the rebels or touched any of their belongings? What did he tell them? You get ready to die. Your judgment gonna come on you too. Don't even touch it. And you know how when you tell somebody don't touch something, that's they want to go and touch it. You mean like this? Or like this? Or like that? Can I touch it like this? Can I just kind of, oops, I touched it. So what's gonna happen to me? You got it's like little kids. And I see grown people, will do it.
Mm-hmm.
They defy God. Anybody ever had that experience? Raise your hand if you have it. So, how do you feel when you see people doing something you know they shouldn't do? You go on ahead, child. Do what you want to do. I ain't ready to do that. Tell me how it works out. Right? I mean, I've seen people do that. They'll push you into that, get you involved in it, and then afterwards do what? Step back. I don't know when to work. What? They don't do that. They got their own mind. They can make their own decision. I tell them they can do whatever they want. I didn't make them do it. Have you ever gotten in something and you were in it, and now you said, well, I've done it now, and I've always said if I would do this, I'm not changing my mind. So you're in it. Your whole mind has changed. But you're still trying to stick with it because you said you would. Anybody? Just one people? 1, 2, 3. Dr. Hardy said she wants to get out. So, once you make a sign on the dotted line for a contract, you want, it's not a contract like that. But sometimes it's friendships. You can be connected to people that you know is not going to be good for you. And sometimes, you know, single ladies have friends, and then when they get married, they got some of those single friends that they didn't even hang out with anymore. You said why? Why not? Why do you think that?
Because they may do something that a bad person can't do.
Exactly. And some of you already know what kind of girl that is. You know what kind of friend you got. Bring your husband around if you want to.
You already know.
Come on now.
Yeah.
Then you know that too.
Yep.
Ain't nobody joking.
Exactly.
You seen her do it to other people. So why you gonna think you going to bad with you?
Yeah, that's true.
You think you're so good at it? Okay, all right, don't go out there too far. That's something we come back to.
My goodness.
So it's a lot. And it's more than that, if I really want to go into. But here's what we're seeing. How would the people know what God had sent Moses? We'll get ready to go into that, right? Let's do that. Let's keep it. Read it. David and the Bible, that's what we are.
The people wasted no time in moving away from Korah, Dathan, and Abiram.
We say, okay. Wasted no time.
No time.
That's Exodus. Continue.
They knew that these men were wicked and had evil intentions, so they disassociated themselves from them very quickly. The 3 insurrectionists quickly found that they had no loyalists among the people they were attempting to manipulate. After the people scattered, Dathan and Abiram came to the door of their tents. They had nowhere to go and no place to hide, as Moses and the elders were right at their front door. The 2 men stood defiantly in opposition to Moses, along with their wives and children. Korah probably did the same at his nearby tent. The setting is pathetic. Instead of sending their families to find cover, these men actually brought them out with them. It is one thing to rebel against God, but it is even worse to lead our families to join us. Moses stood before Dathan and Abiram and boldly declared that God was with him and had sent him to lead Israel out of Egypt and into the promised land. The charge made by the rebels against Moses was that he had assumed control on his own volition and that he was no better than anyone else. They believed Moses was leading the people to their demise in the wilderness and claimed he was unfit and incompetent as a leader. Of course, any charges they made against Moses along these lines was also an accusation against God. God had shown his approval of Moses several times in public demonstrations that were witnessed by everyone. There simply was no excuse now for Korah, Dathan, and Abiram, or anyone else to accuse Moses in such a way. Moses was not afraid to stand before anyone, whether it be 3 rebels or the entire congregation of Israel, and publicly state that the Lord had sent him to do all the things he had done. The works he spoke of here likely referred to the 10 plagues back in Egypt, the parting of the Red Sea, the miraculous provision of quail and manna, and bringing water from a rock. Moses was not claiming to have done any of these exploits by his own power. In fact, his point was that all of them were evidence that God had chosen him and did these acts through the servant he chose. Moses knew he could not have done even one of these things by himself. He was simply pointing to the past to show that he was the appointed by God to lead his people, and God used him in miraculous ways. Moses was an instrument in God's plan. In no way was he orchestrating his own agenda. We should remember that Moses had been perfectly content being a shepherd in Midian. He tried to get out of the job of leading the people, but God would not release him from his calling.
You know, you get a little emotional on this guy. I said, Lord, I ain't do the boy like that. You love him so. But the reality is God knows what's best for us. We don't know what's, and sometimes we get put in positions that we didn't really think about as being a spot to get involved in. And so Moses, he was enjoying being a shepherd. He enjoyed watching over sheep. It was easier to done than dealing with people because people feel like they can say something. Sheep gonna do what you ask them to do. Sometimes they do go straight to curious because they can't see them. They think they can. They want something. They think they see that's not there, and it might be a wolf and they already get eaten by it. And it makes another sheep. So sometimes you're dealing with issues of that sort, and I want to kind of unload some of this right here. What was a major standout here in this passage? Dathan and Abiram here at their tents. What's going on? Okay, here's what we got right here. Moses has warned the people, right? What does he tell them don't do? Don't associate with Dathan, Korah, or Abiram, or Abiram. Don't associate with them. And sometimes when you tell people don't do something, that's the person they want to hang out with. But when they can see, why not? Why not? Rebellious, insurrectionists, as the book will say. They will be judged.
But Bishop, his Moses' words had to mean something to the people because if they didn't, they wouldn't have moved away.
They meant a whole lot because they probably were seeing something. You can see when someone's wrong. You can see it. But if nobody's standing up to tell you that's wrong, you sometimes say, well, I guess if they're not going to say anything, I'll hang out with them. But as soon as they say, you don't have to get around this. Matter of fact, God's going to judge this situation, so I would suggest that you get away from it. The reason why that took a lot of weight and put on the people is because they trusted Moses to get up there. They saw a good bit of what, as the book would highlight, the miracles of God throughout the times. God consistently used Moses in the presence of those people. I don't care how many people talk negatively about a person. You can look at their lives, and their life will speak more than what you say about them. I can let somebody talk so much and I say, okay, well, I don't see that with that person. Matter of fact, everything I see with them is this, and that. Now, you can say whatever you want to say about it. Anybody can create a lie. But listen, the truth is that what I see on a daily basis, what I see with this person, what I see them doing, it gives no indicators as to what you're saying here. Because what they were trying to say is that something was wrong with Moses when it was something wrong with me.
That's true.
They were so busy trying to create and paint a picture around Moses to deride him and to berate him. Matter of fact, the whole goal was to relegate Moses to someone who made himself great. You get this? After a period of time, you can hear that kind of conversation amongst people, period. About any leader. Especially if they are a certain group of people. So, rebellious insurrectionists will be judged. However, the next piece is their items or their goods I'll use the word possessions as well, are tainted and cursed. Why so? How do you think the goods are cursed?
They're cursed.
Because they're cursed. And see, what you don't realize, the preponderance of words that come out of our mouths get on our clothes sheet.
Yes.
We wear our words. Whatever you said is on you. So you say, well, how do you know that? It's on you. You're walking around and it's speaking. Do you know words continue to talk even after you're dead?
Yes.
All these videos and statements that I make constantly, even if something were to take place and I'm not present in this side of the earth, can you understand that those words will continue? You got hard to remember now, you can go back and play it. Because there's this thing here that tells us who we are. I try not to defend. I learned one thing, never defend yourself.
Amen.
Anytime you try to explain something to people who already got their mind made up regarding you,
Yes.
all that does is solidify in their head that you were everything that they thought.
Amen.
But if you ignore what they say,
Yes.
move forward, move onward, move upward, leave it alone, don't touch it, don't stir a mess, because it won't stay if you don't stir.
Amen.
Y'all know what I'm talking about?
Yes,
That
sir.
old dried up stuff, they sit out the yard, don't mess with it, leave it alone.
Leave it alone.
Don't get rid of it. You know, we got people that pick it up. Don't get it. Now, here's the reality. Leave it alone. Moses said, leave them alone. Get away from them. Matter of fact, he was not coming against them so much as he was coming against the idea that other people would be hurt because of them. That's deep. Listen to some more.
Dathan and Abiram appear at their tents. The people wasted no time in moving away from Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. They knew that these men were wicked and had.
I think we read that. I think we're at the next one. This whole one. We good.
I'm sorry.
Listen.
Moses announced a severe test.
Yes, that's it.
Moses' authority had been challenged a number of times before this particular event, and he usually did not offer much in the way of personal self-defense. Here, however, he put forth a test that would either prove or invalidate his divine calling and ministry entirely. Moses declared before the people that if Korah, Dathan, and Abiram died as men commonly died, that is, by natural causes, it would mean the Lord had not called him. However, if they died in a very unique way, namely by the ground suddenly opening up and swallowing them alive and taking them down into the pit, this would clearly demonstrate that God had sent him and that these men had despised the Lord. Moses knew the Lord well enough and long enough that he had full assurance that God had sent him and would respond favorably to his voice. There was no sense of insecurity on his part and no wavering in his faith. He knew that God was going to judge these men and that they would die that day in a unique manner that was unmistakably God's judgment.
Wow, wow, and wow. Number 4, I question. Would someone lead?
How would the people know that God had sent Moses?
How?
By God opening up the ground, the earth, and swallowing them up. It's gonna prove Wow.
If we're gonna die natural death, they're gonna have this gonna be a suddenly. Yeah, I keep hearing people talk about suddenly. I say, y'all be careful with that. Suddenly can be 2 ways. There's suddenly, it can be a suddenly good and a suddenly bad. This will be a suddenly. The ground suddenly opened up, swallowing them alive, and taking them down into the pit called Sheol or hell. Now this hasn't happened yet, but this is the goal, right? This is what God's servant is asking for. So do you think that God do you think that God hears his servant? After a period of time, this test that Moses is setting up, this is not just any test, this is severe. Don't let them die of common death. Don't let them just die naturally. Don't let them die of COVID or something like that. No, not with cancer or none of that. Do something real strange, something ain't nobody ever heard of before. Yeah, just over the earth up and drop them on in. You know, sinkholes are coming everywhere now, so people are not gonna think twice about it because sinkhole, okay. Yeah, when they won't pick Plan Avenue or something. So you got people, all kind of infrastructural problems in the earth now. So let's see. So if he sucked you up in the heavens, and hold you up in the sky, and just beat you in front of everybody, and then release you. That might be nice. No, I'm not asking that. Okay, let's read the next one. Deaths of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. Read it.
Deaths of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. What happened next is one of the most dramatic events ever recorded in human history. In vivid demonstration that the Lord was with Moses and had sent him, the ground stood apart underneath Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. They fell into the crevice along with all their possessions and those people who stood with them. This spectacular event was something Moses was utterly unable to make happen by himself. He did not possess the power to do this simply by waving his hand. It was not some trick. Moses had stated that if the ground opened up and swallowed these men, it would mean that God was with him, and he had not assumed the leadership position on his own accord. By Moses' own words, he said that these men would die by something new, something unexpected that people had never seen before. This is precisely what occurred. As God heard him and caused the ground to split apart, there should have been no doubt in anyone's mind now that God was with Moses.
You know, I like the way it said there should be no doubt. It's always that person. I don't care how great God is proving a point. And I'm standing here as a real proof point on certain things. But even after God tell you, God said you'll never see, you'll never walk, you'll never talk, you'll never hear. Then he does it. Oh, they don't know what he's talking about.
Lord Jesus.
So then he goes to school and they want to place him in special classes because he may not be able to hear, see, or understand stuff. So instead of him going to that group, he ends up gifted. Oh, okay, so that don't mean that they either. Oh, his mama probably did that.
Oh my God.
So we go from that to a whole other space where you're doing You can do well in school, and you can do whatever you do, and you prove the point. That don't mean anything. To people that mean. Matter of fact, what it is, if I kill you and you rise again, that might be, I might pay attention to that. I just might pay attention to that. That's been done. Well, I'll raise you up, because one of the prophets, the first book, the third book, which has the first prophecy, says, your city will see you be raised up by God. I guess if you don't read the book, you don't know. A whole lot of stuff that's going on is happening, but it was already spoken. So I say to people, if God is on your team, I don't care how many folk, new or old, young or Moses. You put a big charge out there. These fellas, what happened to them? Swallowed alive. Let's hear some word.
Swallowed alive. David and Abiram all fell into the opening in the earth and plunged to their deaths as evidenced by the statement that they went down into the pit. Pit translates the Hebrew word Sheol, which refers to the place of the dead. These otherwise healthy men did not die of natural causes, but rather by a direct act of God in judgment with them and affirmation of his calling on Moses. The people of Israel witnessed these men plunge to their deaths as objects of God's divine wrath for orchestrating a rebellion against him. Their motives and actions were not only an offense against God, but also very dangerous to the people. This is made clear by the fact that many of the Israelites later expressed anger with Moses for killing the people of the Lord. So while the Lord's action might at first appear quite severe to some, we can see why such drastic action on his part was necessary. The rebellion had to be squelched. The Israelites scattered in an effort to find secure ground. Fear and panic set in quickly as everyone fled in an attempt to avoid suffering the same fate as the three rebels and their households. This occurrence cannot be dismissed as a natural event such as an earthquake that coincidentally happened at this particular moment. For one thing, it took place just as Moses had said just minutes before. For another, when the ground breaks apart in an earthquake, it does not repair itself.
Exactly.
In this incident, the ground closed back up once the guilty parties had fallen into the open.
I guess that's a good segue to talk about graves being covered over. You usually have to have a grave digger, right?
Yes.
They have to come back and put the dirt on top of the stones and all that other stuff, right? And then you have to buy a headstone. You don't have to buy a headstone and a slab as a reminder and respect. But God didn't do any of that, did he? Okay, he's like you never existed. Ah! And he closes it right back up. Can you imagine whole houses, people, everybody that pertains to the Torah and the Bible, he slaughtered them all at the word of Moses. Moses had just minutes before it spoken, and then God did it. It was almost like he said, God, don't let them die a common death right in front of him. I'm your servant, open his mouth. He was requesting a specific thing. And swallowed them, and God did. Now that's some kind of relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's one thing that people talk about people, I told you nothing to them. But at the end of that, even after they went underground, there were still people that were connected to them. You always have a leftover crew, a remnant from the last crew. And they'll remain forever. They don't go anywhere. That's right there. They still got the attitude of the group that went down. They just didn't touch the things. Look at the question. What does the Hebrew word Sheol refer to? Place of the dead there. Wow. Here's some well-meaning people watching ill-meaning people go down in the pit. This is a good scene. It's like, oh, buddy. You would think they would have repented, but they still rejected Moses. And like can I say this about rebellion? Rebellion never goes away, and rebellion causes one to stiffen their neck. Like our daughter was always here. Yeah. Even when Jesus comes. Why would he got to come with a scepter made out of iron? Why would he have to judge people right immediately? He gonna have rebellious people in the new world. You didn't know that? Y'all not aware of that? Everybody not gonna walk around with wings and hearts. You're gonna be doing work in the earth, the original way God intended. But there'll still be sins.
This is after.
After, yes. And actually, people talking about we just gonna rest. I like, no, I don't think that's the case. Matter of fact, he said too much is given, much is required. And then he's gonna give you, if you will take over a few things, he's gonna make you ruler. Ruler means more work. You think so you go sit down at your house and sit? God never made us to sit still. He made us to work. 6 days man worked, and on the 7th day he rested. We never stop working. We're consistently working. Even when we leave this earth, we go away to be with him, probably rest a while in his presence. But I guarantee you something else coming out of this. I believe that now. I don't believe we just died and that's it. I really do not. I know we're going to get rewards and all that. You have an award stay at school, but that don't mean you're going to come back to school next year. You get graduation, but you still got life to live after that. You don't just graduate and then you go sit down at the house and eat chicken. That's not going to be happening.
Not chicken.
Whatever y'all eat, I'm trying to tell you. What was it necessary for God? Why was it necessary for God to deal with this rebellion in such a drastic way? You better get them before they all get going, because if rebellion is like a cancer. It's malignant. It passes on from one person to the next person. It don't take long for rebellion. If you let say for instance, you can see rebellion in the heart of a person, but you let one of your people get around. Before you know it, that thing, whoever's on them will attack. It'll actually set on them and rest on them. Are you listening to me? Let's hear the next. Read it. Number 8. Mm-hmm. How do they respond?
They scattered.
Fear and panic. They want to avoid that same suffering, right?
Scattered too.
They scattered. As soon as somebody sees something like that happening, is that what's happening here? People screaming and hollering? In our town, when folk will run and try to go see what it is. I am not that person. I'll taste me and tell me what's going on. I'll have to go over there. See the picture? Video part. Ooh, that's terrible. Go to it. Never been that person. Never in my life. Cause you'll run up on your death,
Yes, sir.
trying to see somebody.
That's
else.
true, that's true.
I've seen more people get in an accident looking at one.
Yes,
Oh, y'all seen that?
Yes.
Like,
yes.
oh, everybody, I'm trying to get away from this. Yeah, it's one thing to watch it as a TikTok, it's another thing to be a part of the TikTok. Cause it's you, that's it. Well, what's the next one? Number 9? Let's see what it says. What's number 9?
Why can't this event not be written off as a natural phenomenon, such as an earthquake?
Right.
Cause it open up and close record.
Because it open and close all the way back up. That's right. Last one, let's hear it. That's up to 250.
Back at the tabernacle,
Back in.
fire came forth from the Lord and consumed the 250 men who had joined with Korah, Dathan, and Abiram in this insurrection. As these men stood with their senses burning incense, God punished them for their part in the rebellion. These men were seeking priestly status as they burned incense before the Lord. The Lord rejected this offering, for they were seeking personal power instead of trying to please Him. This does not mean that they were unimportant just because they had not been selected to be priests. God established Aaron and his descendants as priests, in part to prevent instances such as this from happening. The priesthood was never something to be aspired to. One had to be elected by God for it, and his election was established by birth. If a man was not a descendant of Aaron, he could not be a priest. It is a serious mistake to aspire to something God has not called us to or equipped us for. There are no unimportant people in the church. Everyone's role is significant. Be content to do what God has called you to do, and you will find that He will bless you immensely.
That paragraph there, that section, whoa. What happened to the 250 who joined Korah in rebellion?
I came, the Lord consumed them.
They got consumed by fire that they were holding in their hand. God showed you who holding it. That's what Moses told him. He said, come on, bring the incense with you, since you want to be a priest. I like that last phrase. So my point is that many times we don't recognize that jumping into positions, God had to put us there.
That's true.
I was elected, but then I was also appointed. I'm talking about bishop. So you can be in a position, but you got to go. You go through processes. I go through many processes in order to be put in a position. I can't just be a part of something because someone said, "Well, why don't you just jump up and do it?" No, no, and no. Why not? That's not your calling. If God hasn't selected you for a thing, don't try to do it. And when He selects you and puts you in place, He'll anoint you for it. He'll give you the equipment that you need in order to accomplish the goals that are actually accomplished. All right? That's good. Got a few things and then we got here. Let's see. Go over to today's aim. Will someone take facts, please? Or everyone, readers?
To study the Lord's character and disposition in reference to addressing the sin of rebellion among His people.
Among His own people. Principle.
To affirm that God is holy and righteous and is always fair and measured in His response to sin.
Application.
To acknowledge God's holiness and righteousness when it comes to matters of divine discipline, and to realize that our attitudes and actions are seeds that ultimately bring forth either good or bad fruit.
Practical lesson point 1.
When we stand up for what is right, we can trust those who are loyal to the Lord to stand with us. Numbers 16:23-25.
Number 2.
If we collaborate with sinners, we are likely to become guilty in our actions. Verses 26.
That's on the board. Number 3.
Those closest to us often suffer most
For our sins. Verse 27.
Even if they don't know what we've done. Number 4.
If we seek God's will, He will make it evident to us. Verses 28-30.
I was saying something to the saints the other day, and I thought this was good. But you have to be very mindful that you can be harboring a hostage that's running from God. And that's maybe a problem coming up in your home. You got someone in there that's running from something God told him to do, it will cause calamity and collision to come to your house. Number 5.
Person has so long to turn to the Lord, then comes judgment. They should give us an urgency in evangelism. Numbers 16 to 31, 33. God's reference Hebrews 9:27.
And number 6.
We should maintain a healthy fear of the Lord, so we will be reverent and have a greater view of His mercy toward us. Numbers 16, 34 to 35. Matthew 10 and 28.
Did you get a blessing in the lesson?
Yes.
That was a good lesson. And I say something that says that God has to help us in cases where we've been assigned a task. Otherwise, we'll end up doing like this brother's going to do next week. And that doubt. Follow God, and you won't fall out. Follow God, and you won't fall away. Follow God, and you won't fall down. And even if you do fall, He will lift you up. Because He's the one who called you. Let's pray. Precious Father, we bless you and thank you for this time that we share together. We ask God that you bless this study, that we might be reminded of it throughout our lives, so that we can do what is pleasing in your sight and follow you and not our flesh or our desires or the will of others. So we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Next week's lesson, Water from the Rock, Numbers 21 through 13. Make sure you get prepared for that lesson. This will be our last lesson in this quarter, and hopefully by next quarter we will be dividing our classes back up into sections again. So please let the people know that we'll be doing that, so they can be involved in their Sunday school. And thank you so very much. Have a good morning and go into our worship.